I was trimming white roses in my kitchen, their delicate petals a faint echo of my son Ethan's childhood love for them, when my phone buzzed. I'd bought the flowers hoping to bring them to him at the hospital, clinging to the doctor's words that he was stable, that we had time. "Hello?" I answered, a rose still in my hand. "Eleanor," came Clara's voice, my daughter-in-law, flat and detached, not the tone of a woman mourning her husband. "I'm calling about Ethan's funeral." My heart lurched. The rose slipped from my fingers, landing on the tiled floor. "Funeral? What funeral?" I stammered. "Doctor?" Marshall said Ethan was recovering from surgery yesterday morning. "When did you last speak to a doctor, Eleanor?" Clara's tone sharpened, as if my question was an inconvenience. "That was 2 days ago. Ethan passed last night. Complications from an infection." The room tilted. I clutched the counter, my knuckles paling. "No, that's not possible. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't anyone—" "I tried," she cut in, her voice devoid of warmth. "You didn't answer." I grabbed my phone, scrolling through call logs with trembling hands. Nothing. No missed calls from Clara, none from Mercy General Hospital. My phone had been glued to me, waiting for any news about Ethan. "There's nothing here," I whispered. "No calls from you." "Maybe your phone was off," she said dismissively, as if it were trivial. I heard rustling in the background, like she was sorting papers, always in control, always organizing. Anyway, the funeral's set for Thursday at 1 p.m. Small service, just immediate family. Pastor Collins from my church will handle it. Her church. Not the one where Ethan was baptized, where he'd sung hymns as a boy until he was 13. Her church, where I'd always been an outsider. "Clara, please," I pleaded. "Ethan was my son. I need to be part of this." Her voice grew colder, if that was possible. "I've been thinking, Eleanor, and it might be best if you didn't come. It'd be too emotional, too messy. Ethan wouldn't want drama at his funeral." Her words struck like a blow, forcing me to step back, my hip brushing the kitchen table. "You can't mean that. He's my only child." "He was my husband," she snapped. "And honestly, Eleanor, where have you been these past 5 years? You hardly called, barely visited. Don't act like you were close to him now." Her accusations stung, carrying just enough truth to cut deeply. I hadn't called as often as I wanted, hadn't visited as much as I'd planned. But every attempt was met with an excuse. Clara's excuses. Ethan was too tired. They had plans. Something always came up. "I tried," I murmured. "Every time I planned to see him, you said it wasn't a good time." "Trying isn't being there," she retorted. I remembered the birthdays when my calls went unanswered, the holiday invitations quietly rescinded, and the grandchildren. Ethan had told me they were expecting 2 years ago, even mentioned a toddler learning to walk last year. "Wait, the kids?" I said, grasping at a thread. "Ethan's children. I should at least—" "Children?" Clara's voice held genuine confusion, followed by a sharp laugh. "Eleanor, we never had kids. I don't know what Ethan told you, but we decided against it years ago. My career, his health. It was just us." Clara's laugh cut through me like glass. "Eleanor, we never had children. Whatever Ethan told you, we chose not to have kids years ago. My career, his health struggles, we were content just the two of us." Her words unraveled me. The vivid stories Ethan had shared about a pregnancy 2 years ago, a toddler taking first steps last year, even photos he'd shown me of smiling children were lies, borrowed images of someone else's kids. Why would he invent such a fantasy? "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely holding. "Look, Eleanor, I'm swamped finalizing the funeral," Clara said, her tone clipped. It's Thursday at 1 at Harrington Funeral Home on Cedar Lane. If you insist on coming, fine, but don't make a scene. This isn't about you. She hung up before I could reply. I stood frozen, clutching the silent phone, staring at the white rose on the tiled floor. My son was gone, and I'd learned of his death from his wife, as if it were a minor errand she had to check off. My hands trembled as I dialed Mercy General Hospital. "This is about my son, Ethan Harper," I said when a cheerful voice answered. He was a patient there. "Let me transfer you to patient records," the receptionist replied. The hold music, bright and jarring, mocked my grief. Finally, a new voice came on. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we have no record of an Ethan Harper in the past 6 months." "That's impossible," I said. "He had surgery 2 days ago. Dr. Marshall was his surgeon." "We don't have a doctor. Marshall on staff. Are you sure you have the right hospital?" I hung up, my thoughts spiraling. Had Ethan ever mentioned Mercy General, or had I assumed it? Our recent conversations blurred in my mind, fragmented by hope and distance. Desperate for something solid, I called Harrington Funeral Home. "Harrington Funeral Home, this is Susan speaking," a warm voice answered. "I'm calling about Ethan Harper's service on Thursday," I said. "Oh, Mrs. Harper," Susan replied. "Everything's set as you requested. Closed casket, small service, family only. Will you bring the flowers, or should we arrange them?" "I'm not Mrs. Harper," I said slowly. "I'm Eleanor Harper, Ethan's mother." A pause, then a flustered, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harper. Your daughter-in-law said the guest list was final, with no additional family attending. She mentioned you preferred to grieve privately." "She said what?" My voice shook. "She told me it would be too hard for me to attend." "I'm terribly sorry for the mix-up," Susan said. "The service was set for Thursday at 1, but Mrs. Harper called an hour ago to move it to tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 a.m. She said it was best to get it over with quickly. Tomorrow morning, less than 12 hours away. Clara had shifted my son's funeral without telling me. I hung up and sank into a kitchen chair, the white rose on the floor a stark reminder of my exclusion. While I'd be sipping coffee, oblivious, my only child would be laid to rest by the woman who'd pushed me out of his life. Was this her plan all along? To erase me completely? The thought chilled me. I might never know where Ethan was buried. Sleep eluded me that night. Instead, I sat in Ethan's old bedroom, untouched since he left home 11 years ago. His soccer trophies gleamed on the shelves, his college diploma tilted on the wall, hung in a rush before his graduation. When had I lost him? It wasn't a sudden break, but a slow fade, like watching someone vanish into fog. I lifted a photo from his bedside table. Ethan at 25, beaming next to Clara in her wedding gown, her arm curled tightly around him. That day, 3 days before their wedding, I'd felt the first sting of being an outsider. "Mom," Ethan had said, his voice hesitant. "We need to talk about the seating for the ceremony." Ethan's voice carried a nervous edge. "Clara thinks it'd be best if you sat in the 3rd row at the wedding, not the front." "The 3rd row?" I forced a calm tone, though it stung. "Sweetheart, I'm the mother of the groom." "I know, Mom," he said, sounding uneasy. "It's just, Clara's family is large, and they've been planning this for ages. Her great-aunt needs a front-row seat for her mobility scooter." "Of course," I said quickly, swallowing my hurt. I didn't want to start off as the difficult mother-in-law. Whatever makes Clara happy. But the ache lingered. Looking back, that moment was the first of countless small compromises that led to my complete exclusion. I set the wedding photo down and picked up another. Ethan at his high school graduation, his cap tilted, his arms slung around me, grinning. Back then, I was his everything. His father left when Ethan was 7, leaving just the two of us, a tight-knit team. "Mom, you're so embarrassing," he'd teased that day, But his laughter was warm, his presence full. When had that shifted? When had I become a burden instead of his pride? I dug out an old calendar from the year after Ethan's wedding. The pages revealed my handwriting, a record of every thwarted plan. March 10th, visit Ethan, cancelled, Clara's under the weather. April 15th, Easter brunch, switched to Clara's parents' house. June 5th, Ethan's birthday, postponed to next week, but it never happened. August 20th, weekend trip, Clara's cousin is in town, maybe next month. The pattern glared at me now, undeniable. How had I missed it? Every attempt to see my son was met with Clara's polite, reasonable excuses, each one impossible to challenge. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor," she'd say over the phone, her voice smooth as silk. "Ethan's swamped with work, chasing that big promotion. Maybe when things settle." Or, "Oh, I wish you'd called sooner. We just planned a getaway with my old college friends. How about next weekend?" And the one that hurt most: "Ethan's been a bit overwhelmed. His doctor says he needs less stress. Family visits can be so taxing, don't you think?" Family visits. As if seeing me was a chore, not a joy. I scrolled through years of text messages with Ethan on my phone. The shift was subtle, but stark. 3 years ago, "Love you, Mom. See you Sunday." 2 years ago, "Hey, Mom, something came up. Can we reschedule?" Last year, "I'll call you soon." The messages grew brief, sparse, distant. Yet, beneath the chill, I glimpsed the son I knew. 6 months ago, he'd called unexpectedly on a quiet Tuesday. "Mom, you busy?" His voice held a tremor, worry, perhaps sadness. "Never too busy for you, sweetheart. What's wrong?" "Nothing, just remembering when I was 11, that time I had bronchitis. You stayed by my hospital bed for 4 nights, curled up in that awful chair." "Of course I remember," I said softly. "You were so sick. I wasn't leaving you. The nurses kept telling you to go home, but you stayed." A long pause. "Why are you thinking of that, Ethan?" "No reason," he said, his voice catching. "Just thinking about good times." He seemed on the verge of saying more, but Clara's voice broke through in the background. "Who's that?" "I thought we were starting dinner." "I should go, Mom," Ethan said quickly. "Clara's making her signature pasta tonight." "Okay, sweetheart, I love you." "Love you too." It was the last time he said it, the last time he called just to connect. What had he wanted to share? What memories were stirring in him? I wandered to the kitchen and brewed coffee, though it was 2 a.m. As it dripped, I replayed the signs I'd overlooked. Like 2 years ago, when I drove 4 hours with Ethan's favorite lemon cake for his birthday, the same one I'd baked since he was 5. Clara opened the door, her face flickering. Surprise, irritation, then a polished smile. "Eleanor, what a surprise," Clara said, her smile tight, masking a flicker of annoyance. "We weren't expecting you." "I know I should have called," I replied, holding out the lemon cake I'd made for Ethan's birthday, a tradition since he was 5. "It's Ethan's birthday, and I wanted to bring his cake." "How thoughtful," Clara said, her tone overly polite. "But we're just heading out to dinner with my family. My mother booked a table at that new bistro in town." "I could join you," I offered, hope flickering. "I'd love to meet your parents properly." "Oh, I'm afraid the table's too small," she said, taking the cake from my hands. "You know how restaurants are, but this looks wonderful. Ethan will love it." Through the doorway, I saw Ethan slipping on his coat. He glanced up, his expression puzzled, almost irritated. "Mom, what are you doing here?" No warmth, no joy, just confusion. "I brought your birthday cake," I said softly. He crossed the room, offering a brief, awkward hug. "You didn't have to drive all this way. We could have celebrated another time." But that another time never came. The cake sat in their fridge, likely untouched, growing stale. Sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., I realized Clara hadn't just been deflecting me. She'd been reshaping Ethan's view of me, painting me as an inconvenience to be managed, not a mother to cherish. I'd let it happen, so afraid of being the overbearing mother-in-law that I'd accepted every excuse, every boundary, until I'd lost my place in my son's life entirely. The coffee finished brewing, and I poured a cup, my hands still unsteady. In a few hours, Ethan would be buried, and I wouldn't be there to say goodbye. Yet a spark of hope lingered. Maybe it wasn't too late to uncover the truth behind our estrangement. I sensed Clara's next call, laced with panic, was coming soon, and I'd be ready with questions of my own. 7 days. That's how long I'd lived with the agony of not knowing where my son was buried. 7 days of calling cemeteries, funeral homes, anyone who might have answers. 7 days of sleepless nights and uneaten meals. I was at my kitchen table, staring at a list of cemeteries I'd already contacted twice when my phone jolted me with its ring. Hello? What are you doing to my life? Clara's voice erupted so loud I pulled the phone from my ear. This wasn't the cool, controlled woman who'd dismissed my grief. This was someone unraveling. Desperate. Clara, what are you talking about? I asked, stunned. Don't play innocent, Eleanor, she snapped. I know you're behind this. The lawyers, the questions, the investigation. Stop it. I sat up, heart racing. What lawyers? What investigation? I don't know what you mean. The probate lawyer called this morning, she said, her voice cracking. There's an issue with Ethan's will. They need me to bring documents tomorrow. Marriage records, finances, everything. A will. Ethan had a will, and somehow I was entangled in it. The thought hadn't crossed my mind. So consumed was I with finding his grave. I still don't see what this has to do with me, I said cautiously. Stop lying. Her voice broke, raw with fear for the first time since I'd known her. You must have contacted them, contested something, claimed something. Clara, I interrupted. I haven't spoken to any lawyers. I don't even know who Ethan's lawyer was. I've been trying to find out where you buried my son, and you wouldn't even tell me that. Silence hung heavy. Then, softly, Willow Grove Cemetery, Section B, Plot 142. The address, Willow Grove Cemetery, Section B, Plot 142, felt like a lifeline, handed to me as if it were an afterthought. I scribbled it down, my hands unsteady. Thank you, I murmured. Don't thank me yet, Clara said, her voice hardening again. Eleanor, we need to meet in person. There are things about Ethan, things you don't know. What things? I pressed, my heart racing. Not over the phone. Can you come over today? I glanced at the cemetery address, the first solid link to my son after 7 days of searching. But Clara's panic intrigued me. What had shaken her so deeply? I'll come after I visit the cemetery, I said. No. Her voice was sharp, almost pleading. Come here first, please. It's urgent. For the first time, I heard a crack in her composure. Vulnerability, perhaps fear. After years of being shut out, now she needed me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'll be there in an hour, I said. The suburban house looked unchanged, a neat facade hiding the life and death of my son. But when Clara opened the door, she was a shadow of herself. Hair pulled into a messy bun, face pale, clothes rumpled as if she'd worn them for days. Come in, she said, stepping aside. Coffee? I just brewed some. Her politeness felt strained, desperate. I followed her into the kitchen, a space where I'd never been welcome. The counters were buried under scattered legal papers. Clara, what's going on? I asked. She poured coffee, her hands trembling. The lawyer said Ethan changed his will 3 months ago, she said, staring into her cup. Right around the time he... She trailed off. The time he what? I prompted. When he started asking about you, she said, her red-rimmed eyes meeting mine. Why you stopped visiting, stopped calling. I told him you were busy with your own life, that you didn't want to be bothered with us anymore. The lie hung heavy between us. Anger surged in my chest, but her broken expression made me pause. He didn't believe me, she continued. The lawyer said Ethan hired a private investigator. My coffee cup froze midair. A private investigator? To find out why you'd pulled away from him, she said, her voice crumbling. They found phone records, every canceled plan, every excuse I made to keep you apart. Text messages I sent from Ethan's phone while he was at work, saying he was too busy to see you. Emails I deleted before he could read them. The room seemed to sway. You pretended to be Ethan? I asked, setting my cup down carefully. Only a few times, she said quickly, as if that softened it. When he was stressed, when seeing you would have been too much, I was protecting him. From you. Protecting him from his own mother? My voice trembled with disbelief. You don't understand, she said, her tone rising. When we got married, you were all he talked about. Mom said this. Mom would love that. Every choice, every plan revolved around you. I felt like I was married to both of you. I stared at her. This woman who'd methodically stolen my son from me, searching for words to contain my rage. So you fixed it by lying to us both? I thought distance would help, she said, her voice breaking. I thought Ethan would focus on our marriage, that you'd find your own life, your own passions. Did it work? I asked quietly. She looked at her hands, defeated. For a while. He mentioned you less. We were happy, Eleanor, until 3 months ago. Until 3 months ago, I echoed. What changed? He started asking about you again, she said. Why you didn't call. Why you seemed so distant. I told him you were fine, that you'd said you wanted space. But he didn't buy it. He said you used to call every week. Never missed a birthday or anniversary. Always remembered the little things. Then, suddenly nothing. He said that wasn't like you. Tears welled in my eyes. My son had known something was wrong. Clara gestured at the scattered papers on the counter, her voice trembling. The investigator's findings. They were enough for Ethan to rewrite his will. The lawyer said he left everything to you, Eleanor. The house, his savings, his life insurance, all of it. Her words hit me like a wave, stealing my breath. Everything? There's a letter, she added softly, her eyes wide with fear. The lawyer has it. Something Ethan wrote to go with the will. I don't know what it says, but I think he uncovered everything I did. I think he was planning to leave me. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of her confession. Outside, a lawnmower hummed, its ordinary drone clashing with the upheaval of this moment. The investigator's report, Clara continued, pacing to the window. It showed clear evidence that your relationship with Ethan was undermined. By me. She turned, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to cut you out completely, Eleanor. I just wanted to be his priority. Just once. Now he's gone, and I've lost everything that mattered. The worst part? I think he knew what I'd done. I think he died seeing me as a monster. Maybe he had. Maybe in his final months, Ethan had seen through the lies Clara wove around us. Maybe he'd been planning to reach out, to mend what we'd lost. But that chance was buried with him. I need to see that lawyer, I said, standing. I need to read Ethan's letter. Clara nodded, her expression defeated. His name's James Thornton. His office is on Elm Street. He's expecting you tomorrow at 9 a.m. As I headed for the door, she called out, Eleanor, what about the house? The inheritance, What will you do? I turned to face her. This woman who'd stolen years with my son, twisting truth into lies until neither of us knew what was real. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to learn exactly what Ethan wanted me to know. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in 7 days, I had a purpose. 2 destinations. Willow Grove Cemetery, to finally say goodbye, and a lawyer's office, to uncover what my son had left me beyond material things. I sensed Ethan's letter would change everything. The cemetery was still, save for the whisper of wind through the oaks. Section B, Plot 142. A plain granite headstone bore Ethan's name, his birth and death dates. Nothing more. No beloved husband, no cherished son. Just the stark truth that 35 years was far too short. I knelt, the damp earth cool against my knees, and placed the white roses I'd brought. The same flowers I'd been holding when Clara's call shattered my world. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered. "Sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I didn't fight harder to stay in your life." The breeze stirred the leaves above, and for a fleeting moment I heard Ethan's voice from childhood. "Mom, you fret too much." He'd said it with a grin, brushing off my worries over skinned elbows or schoolyard slights. I stayed for an hour, pouring out everything, the truths I'd learned, the regrets I carried. When I stood, I felt unburdened, not healed, but free of the crushing uncertainty of not knowing where he rested. James Thornton's office was classic small town: polished wood, leather chairs, shelves of well-worn law books. He was younger than I'd pictured, perhaps in his late 30s, with warm eyes behind round glasses. "Mrs. Harper, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to a seat. "Please sit." I settled into the chair, clutching my purse like a shield. "In 25 years of law," he said, pulling a thick file from his desk, "I've never encountered a case quite like this." Clara had told me Ethan rewrote his will 3 months ago, but it wasn't just the will he'd changed. He'd hired a private investigator and left detailed instructions for his estate. James Thornton opened the file and slid several documents across his desk. "Before we dive into the details," he said, "Ethan left this for you." He handed me a sealed envelope, my name written in Ethan's familiar script. My hands trembled as I took it. "Would you like a moment alone to read it?" he asked. I nodded, words failing me. He stepped out, closing the door gently. I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding, before carefully tearing it open. Inside were 3 pages, written in black ink on plain paper. Ethan's handwriting was usually precise, but this was uneven, as if he'd rushed to pour out his thoughts. "Mom," it began, and I paused, wiping tears from my eyes. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and James has followed my wishes to deliver this letter. I don't know how much time I have left. The doctors aren't hopeful about the next surgery, but I need you to know the truth about what came between us. 6 weeks ago, I hired a private investigator because something felt wrong. You faded from my life so slowly I barely noticed at first, but then I realized we hadn't truly spoken in over a year. Every time I tried to call, Clara said you were too busy. Every time I suggested a visit, she had an excuse. When I asked her directly, she claimed you wanted space, that you thought I leaned on you too much, and needed to focus on my marriage. That broke my heart, Mom, but I believed her because I trusted her. I thought maybe you did want distance, but it never sat right. You raised me alone after Dad left when I was 7. We were a team. You never made me feel like a burden, so I had to know what really happened. The investigator's report is with James. You should read it. In short, Clara was intercepting our calls, emails, texts. She canceled plans I never knew about, sent messages I didn't write. She lied to us both, Mom, keeping us apart on purpose. I confronted her last week. She denied it at first, But when I showed her the evidence, she broke down and admitted everything. She said she felt like she was competing with you, that she needed to be the center of my world. I told her love doesn't work like that. You don't shrink one bond to grow another. You taught me that, back in high school when I worried about dating. You said the heart has room for everyone who matters, and true love wants you to thrive, not be cut off. She apologized, promised to make it right. But Mom, I don't think I can forgive her. She stole years from us. Years we'll never get back. While you thought I'd pushed you away, I thought you'd moved on without me. The truth is, I never stopped needing you. I missed our Sunday calls, hearing about your rose garden, sharing stories about my job. I never stopped being proud to call you my mom. I'm leaving everything to you. The house, my savings, my life insurance, because you're my true family. Not just by blood, but by love. You were there for every fever, every soccer game, every late-night talk when I was scared or lost. You taught me to drive, cheered at my graduation, even when you were exhausted from double shifts. I'm also leaving you a choice about Clara. She doesn't know about the will yet. She assumes everything goes to her. You can decide if she deserves provision or if she should face the consequences of her actions. It's a heavy burden, I know, and I'm sorry to place it on you. But I trust your wisdom more than anyone's. Whatever you choose will come from compassion, not vengeance. I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry I let her deceive me for so long. Sorry I didn't trust my gut sooner. Sorry I can't make this right in person. I love you, Mom. I always have. Ethan's letter continued. Clara's actions never changed that. Even when I was confused, you remained the best mother I could have hoped for. I'm proud to be your son. Don't let guilt consume you. You did nothing wrong. You loved me fiercely, but never possessively. Clara's jealousy and lies aren't your fault, nor mine. Live your life, Mom. Be happy. And sometimes, when you're tending your roses or sipping that awful coffee you love, think of me and smile, not cry. All my love, Ethan. P.S. I hid a key to my safe deposit box in the old tin mug in your kitchen, the one you used for spare change when I was a kid. There's something there I want you to have. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. These weren't the raw, anguished tears of the past week, but tears of solace, of a bond unbroken despite years of lies. James Thornton knocked softly and re-entered, settling into his chair. Your son was meticulous, he said gently. The investigator's report is thorough. Phone logs, email records, even statements from neighbors who noticed the pattern of thwarted visits and altered plans. He slid another document across the desk. The estate is significant. The house, valued at roughly $320,000, a savings account with $175,000, and a life insurance policy of $450,000. It all goes to you. Nearly $1 million. Money Clara had likely already counted on, maybe even planned for. There's also this, James said, handing me a smaller envelope. Instructions for the safe deposit box. Ethan was clear you should visit it alone when you're ready. I thought of the key hidden in the tin mug in my kitchen, a relic from Ethan's childhood when I'd stashed coins for his school lunches. He'd remembered that small detail after all these years. What are my legal obligations to Clara? I asked. None, James replied. Ethan left her nothing, and in this state, inheritances aren't considered community property. But, he added, pausing, Clara's been calling daily since learning of the will change. She's worried about her finances, enough to admit some of her actions. She's confessed? I asked. Yes. She seems to grasp that her choices have consequences. He leaned forward. Mrs. Harper, I've read Ethan's letter and the investigator's report. What was done to you and your son was calculated and cruel. Your anger is justified. I pictured Clara in her cluttered kitchen, surrounded by legal papers, her carefully built world collapsing. Part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction at her fear, but another part, echoing Ethan's voice, wondered what he'd want me to do. "I need time to think," I said finally, "to process this." "Of course," James said, handing me his card and copies of the documents. "When you're ready to decide on the estate, just call. And Mrs. Harper, Ethan spoke of you often while preparing this. He wanted you to know none of this was your fault, and that his love for you never wavered." I left the office feeling as if Ethan's voice walked with me, not the distant tone of our final calls, but the warm voice of the boy who once called me his best friend. One more stop awaited. The safe deposit box could wait, but the tin mug in my kitchen couldn't. I needed to hold whatever piece of Ethan waited there. The drive home felt lighter, like I was finally moving toward something true. The old tin mug tucked on the top shelf of my pantry behind the sugar and flour had sat untouched for 16 years. I'd almost forgotten the tin mug existed, a remnant from Ethan's high school days when I'd saved spare change for his soccer tournament fees and late-night snacks. My hands shook as I pulled it from the pantry shelf. It felt heavier than I recalled, and a gentle shake revealed a soft clink. Not just coins, but something else. I pried off the lid, revealing quarters and dimes nestled at the bottom, and among them, a small brass key and a bundle wrapped in tissue paper. I unwrapped the tissue first, revealing a delicate silver bracelet I'd given Ethan for his 17th birthday, engraved with, "My son, my heart, my light." He'd worn it through high school and college, but I hadn't seen it in years, assuming he'd outgrown or misplaced it. Yet here it was, proof he'd held onto it, even as Clara worked to sever our bond. The key, small and precise, was for a safe deposit box. A tiny tag listed an address downtown and box number 142, matching Ethan's grave plot in Willow Grove Cemetery. He'd planned this with care, even in his final months. Sitting at my kitchen table, clutching the bracelet, I marveled at how Ethan had seen through Clara's lies, taking steps to preserve our connection beyond death. But one question lingered. Why had Clara done this? What drove her to dismantle the love between a mother and son? My phone buzzed, snapping me from my thoughts. Clara's name flashed on the screen. "Eleanor, thank God you answered," she said, her voice raw but steadier than yesterday's panic. "I need to see you again. There's more. Things I didn't tell you. Important things." "About why you did this?" I asked, gripping the bracelet. "About my past. Before Ethan. You deserve the full truth." Part of me wanted to hang up, to focus on Ethan's legacy instead of Clara's justifications, but another part, for Ethan's sake, needed answers. "I'll come," I said firmly, "but this is the last time, Clara. After today, we're done, unless it's through lawyers." "I understand," she said quietly. An hour later, I sat in her living room, now tidied, the scattered papers gone. Clara looked more composed, her hair neat, serving coffee in delicate cups as if formality could soften years of deceit. "I need to start from the beginning," she said, staring into her coffee. "Before I met Ethan," she took a breath, "I was engaged once to a man named Daniel. We'd been together 3 years, planning our wedding, building a future. But his mother despised me from the start. I waited, unsure where this led. She thought I wasn't good enough. Wrong background, wrong upbringing, wrong everything. She did everything to tear us apart, just like you might think of me." Clara's voice wavered. "Please, let me finish." She won. Daniel called off our wedding a month before the date, convinced by his mother that I was only after his wealth, that my love wasn't real. I could see the story's path, and despite all Clara had done, a pang of empathy stirred. "When I met Ethan," she continued, I vowed no mother would come between me and the man I loved again. I know it doesn't excuse what I did, Clara said, her voice heavy. But it wasn't about you, Eleanor. It was my fear driving me. So you saw me as a threat to eliminate, I said, my tone steady despite the ache in my chest. I wanted to protect my marriage, she replied, rising to pace toward the window. But somewhere along the way, it became about control. I liked being the only woman in Ethan's life, the one he turned to for everything. Even when you saw it was hurting him? I asked. That's the thing, Clara said, turning to face me, her eyes red. I convinced myself it wasn't hurting him. Every canceled visit, every intercepted call, I told myself I was sparing him disappointment, that you were aging, busy with your own life, maybe not wanting us around. She sank back into her chair, shoulders slumped. I believed my own lies until these last few months, when Ethan started asking questions I couldn't answer. When he hired that investigator. What did the report show? I asked, my voice tight. It wasn't just what I'd done, she said, her voice breaking. It showed the impact on both of you. Your phone logs had countless unanswered calls to our house, emails you sent that I deleted before Ethan could see them. Birthday cards, holiday gifts I threw out. She paused, wiping her eyes. The investigator spoke to your neighbors. They said you stopped talking about Ethan because it hurt too much. I thought of my chats with Mrs. Larson next door, how I'd stopped mentioning Ethan because every story ended with, "He's too busy for me now." There's more, Clara continued, her voice barely a whisper. The investigator found your medical records. Last year, your emergency gallbladder surgery. You were in the hospital for 3 days. I froze, the memory sharp. The sudden pain, the urgent operation, the lonely recovery. What about it? You listed Ethan as your emergency contact. The hospital called him. My heart sank, cold dread spreading. I'd been alone those 3 days, assuming Ethan didn't care about his mother's health struggles. I told him you were fine, Clara admitted, tears falling. I said you'd asked not to be disturbed, that friends were looking after you. He was halfway to the hospital when I called him back, saying you'd been discharged and were resting at home with your friend Susan. I told him showing up would embarrass you, that you didn't want him seeing you weak. I stared at her, the weight of those 3 days crashing back, lying in the hospital bed, wondering if anyone would care if I didn't make it. Convincing myself independence meant facing it alone. He wanted to come, I whispered, more to myself. Every time, Clara said, her voice cracking. When you twisted your knee, when your car broke down on the interstate, when you had that flu 2 winters ago, he wanted to be there. I convinced him you didn't want his help. The room spun. All those moments I'd struggled alone, believing Ethan had moved on, he'd been kept away by Clara's lies. Why tell me now? I asked. Yesterday, when I saw the desperation in your eyes about not knowing where he was buried, I realized I didn't just take him from you. I took you from him. And in the end, I lost him too. She wiped her face with a tissue. The night before his last surgery, Ethan told me he was leaving me. He said he couldn't stay with someone who'd kept him from his mother for years. He planned to call you after the surgery, to tell you everything. I closed my eyes, picturing the conversation we'd never have. He died thinking I was a monster, Clara said, her voice raw with despair. And he was right. She looked at me, pleading. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I loved him, Eleanor. I loved him, but I loved him wrong. I stood, the weight of Clara's house, filled with deception and shattered dreams, too heavy to bear. Where are you going? She asked, trailing me to the door. To the bank, to see what else Ethan wanted me to know. Wait, Eleanor. The will. The inheritance, she stammered. I know I don't deserve anything but the house, Ethan's savings. I don't know how I turned to face her. I haven't decided yet, Clara, but whatever I choose, it won't be out of pity. It'll be what Ethan would have wanted. What do you think he'd want? She asked, her voice small. I thought of my son, the man who'd hired an investigator to uncover the truth, who'd rewritten his will to affirm his love for me, yet left me the power to decide Clara's fate. I think he'd want justice, I said, but also mercy. I opened the door. I just don't know which you deserve. At First National Bank, a clerk led me to the basement vault, to safe deposit box 142. Alone with the small metal door, I opened it to find a manila envelope and a velvet jewelry box. I started with the envelope, revealing 3 letters in Ethan's handwriting, dated across the past 2 years. Words he'd poured out but never sent. The first, from 16 months ago, was laced with confusion. Mom, I don't know what happened to us. I keep searching for a moment I messed up. But there's nothing. Just silence. The second, from 7 months ago, showed suspicion. Something's off. Clara always has a reason I can't call or visit you. I'm starting to wonder what she's hiding. The third, from 6 weeks ago, when he'd hired the investigator, was resolute. I'm getting to the truth, Mom. If Clara's kept us apart, I'll make it right. I miss you more than words can say. Tears fell as I opened the jewelry box. Inside was my grandmother's ring, the one I'd given Ethan when he got engaged, saying it was for his future daughter. He'd kept it for me instead, with a note tucked beneath. This belongs with you, where it was always meant to be. Love, your son. I slipped the ring onto my finger, sitting in the quiet vault, surrounded by Ethan's unsent letters, proof our bond had endured despite Clara's walls. Now I faced the choice Ethan left me, to rebuild or to punish, to offer mercy or demand justice. For the first time since this ordeal began, I knew what he'd want. I spent 3 days reflecting, rereading Ethan's letters, wearing the ring, letting his love guide me through my anger. On the 4th day, I called James Thornton to arrange a meeting with him and Clara. She arrived at his office looking worn, hair uncombed, clothes creased, clutching a tissue box like a shield. Her eyes brimmed with tears when she saw me. Clara, sit, I said, my voice steady, anchored by Ethan's words. James cleared his throat, pulling out the estate documents. Mrs. Harper has decided on the distribution of Ethan's assets. Clara's hands trembled as she waited. I'm giving you the house, I said calmly. Her eyes widened. What? The house is yours, free and clear, but nothing more. I met her gaze. The savings and life insurance will fund a foundation in Ethan's name, supporting programs that help children stay connected with their grandparents after family conflicts. Clara blinked, struggling to process. Why? She whispered. Because Ethan wouldn't want you homeless, I said, but he wouldn't want you to profit from the pain you caused. I pulled out one of his letters and read, The heart has room for everyone who matters, and true love wants you to thrive, not be cut off. I taught Ethan that lesson at 17, when he was nervous about his first girlfriend. He never forgot it. Love isn't about control or possession. It's about wanting the best for someone, even when they've hurt you. I folded his letter carefully, tucking it into my purse. Clara was crying now, soft tears from a deep, fractured place within her. I don't deserve this kindness, she said, her voice breaking. No, I agreed, you don't. But Ethan did, and this is what he'd have wanted. James cleared his throat. There are conditions to this arrangement, he said. Clara looked up, wiping her eyes. You'll sign a statement admitting what you did, I continued. A full account of how you manipulated Ethan and me, intercepting calls, fabricating excuses, keeping us apart. It stays private unless you contact me again or spread lies about our family. I understand, she said, nodding through tears. You'll also attend counseling, I added. Not just a few sessions, real therapy, to understand why you did this, so you never hurt anyone else. She nodded again. And one more thing. I pulled a small photo album from my purse, compiled over the past few days. These are Ethan's moments, his first steps, his soccer games, his college graduation. Moments you never saw because you were too busy erasing me from his life. I slid it across the table. Look at these and see what you broke. Not just my bond with him, but his connection to his own past, the stories and traditions you buried. Clara's hands trembled as she opened the album, pausing at a photo of 5-year-old Ethan, face smeared with ice cream at a birthday party, grinning wildly. This is the man you married, I said. Shaped by love, not control, raised to believe family lifts you up, not holds you back. She turned the page to a picture of teenage Ethan and me at his high school graduation, both of us radiant with pride. That day, I said softly, he told everyone I was his hero for working 2 jobs to get him through school. He called me the strongest person he knew. He said that about me too, Clara whispered. After we married, he admired my drive, my career, how I chased what I wanted. Then why wasn't that enough? I asked. Why did you need to be the only woman in his life? She stared at the photo, her voice barely audible. I was terrified of losing him, like I lost Daniel. But I see now. I lost Ethan anyway. Lie by lie. James handed her the documents. As she signed, acknowledging her deception and agreeing to the conditions for keeping the house, a quiet peace settled over me. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would have left her with nothing. Nor was it forgiveness. That might come later, if ever. This was justice, softened by the compassion Ethan always showed, even to those who didn't deserve it. When the papers were signed, Clara looked at me, hesitant. Will you tell me about him? What he was like as a boy? I know I don't deserve it, but I want to know who he was before me. I considered refusing. She'd stolen years of Ethan's stories from me. Why share them now? But then I recalled a line from one of his unsent letters. I wish I could tell Clara about the time you taught me to drive in the empty school lot, or how you'd hum folk songs while making dinner. I wish she knew loving you didn't mean loving her less. He was endlessly curious, I said at last. Even as a toddler, he needed to understand how things worked. At 3, he took apart our blender to see where the fruit went. A faint smile crossed Clara's face. He was still like that, always tinkering, trying to improve things. He got that from his grandfather, I said, thinking of my father, an engineer like Ethan. I closed my purse and stood. Ethan always said he inherited our family's knack for fixing things. In the end, he was tackling the hardest puzzle of all, how to bring his 2 families together. His 2 families, Clara echoed, clutching the photo album. You were his family too, Eleanor, despite everything I did. He loved you. That's why this was so hard for him, why he waited so long to confront me. He didn't want to choose between us. She rose, her eyes glistening. Thank you. For the house, the photos, for not destroying me as I deserved. Don't thank me, I said. Thank Ethan. This is his compassion, not mine. As I left James Thornton's office, I felt Ethan's presence, not the distant voice of our final calls, but the boy who'd squeeze my hand crossing the street and whisper, I love you, before bed. 6 months later, an unexpected package arrived. Inside was a framed photo of Ethan I'd never seen, around 30, standing in a garden, laughing at something beyond the frame. A note from Clara was taped to the back. I found this in his desk at work, by his computer. You should have it. Thank you for showing me what true love means. I'm trying to learn. I placed the photo on my mantle beside the others and smiled. Ethan was right. The heart's capacity for love is boundless, even for hearts scarred by betrayal. The foundation in his name had already helped dozens of families mend bonds broken by deceit or conflict. Each quarterly report reminded me that his loss, though heartbreaking, had sparked something meaningful. But true healing came on quiet Sunday mornings in my rose garden, wearing my grandmother's ring, thinking of Ethan, not the years stolen, but the love that endured Clara's lies. He'd found a way back to me, not in person, but through his letters, the foundation funded by his legacy, and the peace he gave me by trusting me to choose mercy over vengeance. Some bonds, I'd learned, are stronger than deception. Some love outlasts loss. The greatest gift a child can give is proof they never stopped cherishing the connection that shaped them, even when it seemed shattered. I'd miss Ethan every day, always. But thanks to his final gift, the truth of our unbreakable bond, I could remember him as he wanted. My son, my heart, my light, and my greatest teacher of love's resilience. That was enough. That was everything.